What is up, my VR homies? You guys are tuned in to the VR Game Rankings YouTube show, and of course, this is the daily vlog series. It is Wednesday, March 21st, and this is episode 123 of the show. There is lots of stuff that is going on at GDC right now as I speak. In fact, Oculus is holding a special conference right now where they are releasing all kinds of information about the Oculus Go and Oculus Santa Cruz as well. Now, I'm not going to be covering these topics on this episode today because if I were to try to do that, I would just be scrambling, looking at the headlines, not really knowing what's going on. Instead, I think it's a better idea. I'll wait and cover that stuff tomorrow. I'll have an entire day to actually look at the information and kind of understand what's going on and be able to better bring you that information on tomorrow's episode. So we're not going to get into the Oculus Go and Santa Cruz related stuff on today's episode. However, we still have a lot of good juicy stuff for you on today's episode. So why don't we go ahead and get the ball rolling? And you know what? Story number one is Magic Leap related. So Tim Sweeney, the CEO, the head guy in charge at Epic Games, has been opening his mouth like he wants to do. I mean, this is a guy, he has been very outspoken in the past. We know that Tim Sweeney is not afraid to ruffle a few feathers. I really like this guy. I feel like he is a straight shooter. He's not afraid what anybody else thinks. He speaks his mind. Every once in a while, he definitely gets himself into a little bit of trouble. Of course, a couple of years back, he kind of went on these crazy rants about Microsoft and what Microsoft is doing to try to close the PC platform and try to lock it down. And it was almost like Tim Sweeney was a bit in a panic over this and kind of warning the rest of the industry. That has kind of blown over, but I still like the guy. He is a very outspoken guy, and he's been saying a lot of interesting stuff in relation to Magic Leap. Now, Ars Technica has an article on this where they did an interview with Tim Sweeney, and they have a lot of his quotes in regards to virtual reality and augmented reality, and very specifically Magic Leap. And the reason this is in the news, you do have to take all of these quotes with a large grain of salt from the standpoint that just this week on Monday, it was announced that Unreal Engine 4 is fully compatible with Magic Leap and that developers that want to make Magic Leap experiences will be able to use Unreal Engine 4. So this was kind of the big announcement that came out. And so Tim Sweeney, obviously they kind of worked out a deal here with Magic Leap, so we don't expect him to jump into an interview and talk a bunch of smack about how Magic Leap is going to be a major disappointment or anything like that. Obviously, he's not going to say that, but at the same time, this guy is a straight shooter, and he pretty much speaks what's on his mind. So I think he's similar in a way to like Gabe Newell. He doesn't talk all the time, but when he speaks, you kind of want to listen because, hey, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. I mean, just consider the piles of money that he has to walk around every day in his office, wheelbarrows full of money that is just coming in every day from Fortnite. I mean, Epic Games, say what you will, but these guys know how to print money. And so Tim Sweeney, when he talks, people listen. So let's go ahead and get into some of the quotes that he had in this Ars Technica article. So one of his first quotes is, "I expect this to eventually replace smartphones. Walking around in real life, instead of watching people fiddle around with a cell phone in their pocket, you'll be watching them make gestures to interact with the AR user interface." So yeah, basically in this article, he's talking about how he sees a future where basically augmented reality is pretty much going to dominate everything and that it will eventually replace smartphones. And I don't think anybody is really questioning this. I mean, I'm sure there's a few people out there that question this, but the idea, the thought process is that eventually AR glasses will be so unobtrusive and so subtle that you really won't know if someone is wearing AR glasses or if they're not wearing AR glasses. And when we get to this point of ubiquitousness, is that even a word? I don't know, but I just made it up on the fly. But when we get to that point, you're not going to see people looking down, fidgeting at their phones. Instead, they're going to kind of be staring off into the wilderness and doing little weird things with their hands. So we're going to trade one bit of goofy human activity for another bit of goofy human activity. So, that's what Tim believes. And I don't think anybody really argues with that. I think the real question is, how soon will this happen? So here's what Tim Sweeney is talking about. He believes that there's going to be 10 million early AR adopters within the next 2 to 3 years. And actually, let me go ahead and read this quote. He says, you take, say, 10 million users and really astonish them and give them a product that's really amazing in order to get 100 million users. Then you have to satisfy the 100 million users to get a billion users, and so on. It's going to deploy over time. And so in this particular part of this interview, basically what Tim Sweeney is talking about is he really believes that with the arrival of Magic Leap, that this is kind of kicking off a new era, and this is kind of really kicking off the beginning of the AR area, that the AR era that is going to be kicked off. That HoloLens really didn't kick it off. That Magic Leap is going to be the one to kick it off. And he believes within the first 2 to 3 years, there will be 10 million AR early adopters. And he's basically just saying here, look, if Magic Leap and any other companies that also have similar products, if they can really wow and really excite the 10 million users that they have in this first 2 to 3 years, then what will happen is these 10 million users will work as evangelists and will help spread the gospel to everybody else. And then you're going to bump up to 100 million users. And then you take care of that 100 million, you wow the hell out of them. And then that is how you get to a billion. And he's saying it's going to deploy over time. This is not going to be an instantaneous thing. It is going to take many, many years for this to happen. Now, at this point, Tim started to get into a little bit of more specific talk in relation to Magic Leap 1 Creators Edition, which is releasing later this year. We do have to remember that this is a product coming later this year, and they are at GDC right now. They did release the SDK, the Lumen SDK. The Lumen runtime is going to be coming in the future a little bit, but here's what Tim Sweeney had to say about Magic Leap 1 Creators Edition. Really a magical piece of technology that is the missing link towards making that experience possible. He goes on to say, Magic Leap is the first product where the rubber really meets the road. So that's kind of a dig, I guess, at HoloLens and any other AR product that currently exists, because he's kind of discounting all of that. Now, of course, we do know Tim Sweeney is not necessarily the biggest fan of Microsoft, so it wouldn't be that incredibly shocking if he's not the biggest fan of HoloLens, but it is interesting that he kind of is dismissing HoloLens outright, or any other AR related product, by saying that Magic Leap, the arrival of Magic Leap, is really when the rubber meets the road. He goes on to say, they have all the key components there. They make it all work. The challenge for subsequent generations of hardware will be miniaturizing to the point where it really is truly nothing bigger than your Oakley sunglasses, and the pixels are truly indistinguishable from reality. So basically, ultimately, if you read this entire article, now they don't have a transcript of this actual interview, at least not yet. Maybe that's coming in the future. Maybe they'll have a video on it. I'm not sure. But if you go over to, where was this? Ars Technica. Yeah. So if you go over to Ars Technica, they do have this article, and that's where all this information is in. And basically, he's ultimately saying, the gist of this article is he basically believes that AR is going to be the ultimate winner. I mean, he pretty much goes out on a limb. A lot of executives will kind of toe the line, and they won't necessarily say that AR is going to dominate. A lot of them will say AR, VR, it doesn't matter. They're all going to converge on each other. No, Tim is willing to kind of go out on a limb here, and he's saying that AR will be the ultimate winner of this game. In fact, he actually talks about VR for a little bit, and he says that he believes VR in the short term might be a little bit more popular, but that it will be outpaced quickly, and one of the things that he says about VR is he believes that it will have an audience of around 200 million people, but that these 200 million people are going to be composed of hardcore gamers and on-site entertainment solutions such as theme parks like Disneyland and Universal Studios and stuff like that, the Void, and entertainment centers like that, where they use VR to give you this compelling on-site entertainment experience, and then just a ton of hardcore gamers around the world. But that VR is not going to be this huge mainstream thing that everybody thinks it will. One of the reasons he says that VR is never going to be quite like that is because while AR can simulate a VR experience, that VR can't really simulate an AR experience. Now, I'm not sure I exactly agree with that, because if you guys remember, there was this 5G trial recently where they had some basketball players passing or taking free throws, and they had a camera on front of their VR headset, and it was basically delivering them real reality from their camera running over 5G, and they were able to make free throws, and a couple football players were passing a football back and forth, and they were able to catch it, demonstrating how incredibly fast and how little latency that 5G has with these VR headsets. So I believe there will be VR headsets that will be able to provide a lot of AR. Now, the downside of it is they might not be as slim and sleek potentially as some AR headsets, but I kind of believe in a full-blown convergence between these two technologies. But Tim's kind of going out on a limb here. Ultimately, what we want to take from all of this interview is he's very bullish on Magic Leap. He really feels like Magic Leap has something special. And you know what I think it could be about Magic Leap? You know how we've always kind of focused in on this like groundbreaking holograms that are just going to blow everybody away. Like their technology is going to be so much better than HoloLens. I'm starting to believe that that is not really what's going on here, at least not with Magic Leap 1 Creators Edition. I think what is going on with Magic Leap 1 Creators Edition is that they have packed so much tech into this device, so many little sensors that are sensing so many things around you, sensing the position of your head, the position of your body, tracking the room, and tracking all kinds of, there is a lot of technology that is packed into the Magic Leap 1. And I don't think it's so much a case that their holograms are going to blow HoloLens out the water or anything like that. But what it is they're packing so much tech in there that they're doing it right, that they are, the way the holograms are going to be placed in your environment, it's going to look right, it's going to feel right. And I think that's where they have the true advantage here. That's where people are blown away by Magic Leap. Not that they're doing something radical that no one else can possibly do, but that they've put it together in a single package, maybe 3 years ahead of anybody else. And that is the power of Magic Leap. But we're going to have to wait and see how that plays itself out a little bit further down the line. Okay, let's go to story number 2. Story number 2, Apex Construct. Talked about this yesterday. I'm not going to beat a dead horse and talk about it anymore today. The only thing I wanted to say is I didn't mention this yesterday because I didn't see it, but there is an incredible deal for Oculus Rift owners if you're interested in Apex Construct, because you know how Oculus has these duo packs where they are combining 2 really good games at a really solid price of $29.99. We've seen these different combos that they have with a lot of different games, some interesting packages. Well, the latest duo pack that they have is Apex Construct and Zing the Land Beyond. Yeah, these are 2 of my favorite VR games over, say, the last 6 months or so. You know, Zing the Land Beyond, an incredible puzzle game, amazing atmosphere, an amazing vibe, wonderful music. This is the feel-good game of the year. Zing is one of these games you can just put Zing on, walk around that world, you're going to feel better. Your mood is going to be lifted. At least that's the way I feel when I play Zing the Land Beyond. And here you buy this Apex Construct, it's $29.99. You're basically getting Zing the Land Beyond for free in this deal. So definitely a good deal, this duo pack deal. definitely a good deal for Oculus Rift owners. Okay, so let's go to story number 3. Story number 3, Skyrim VR. We know this is coming on April 3rd. It is just around the corner, but one of the other shoes to fall is the recommended PC specs. Yeah, the recommended specs, the minimum specs, that has come out today. And of course, all of us that are maybe not having the most beastly of PC rigs, we have to wonder about this. Are we going to be able to play Skyrim VR on our PC systems, or are we going to need to scramble and buy a new video card or bump up our RAM or get a new CPU or any of that sort of thing? So the specs have been released, and there is definitely some good news here, folks, because if you are able to play Fallout 4 VR, you're probably not going to have a problem with Skyrim VR. In fact, the minimum specifications and the recommended specifications are a little bit less than they are on Fallout 4 VR. For example, Fallout 4 VR, the minimum recommended GPU is a GTX 1070. That was the minimum. Now, the minimum for Skyrim VR is a 970, so that's quite a bit of a step down. And then the recommended GPU for Fallout 4 was a GTX 1080. Now, the recommended GPU for Skyrim is a 1070. So it does appear that the specs are a little bit lower. Now, as far as the CPU, I'm not really sure here. I'm not a hardware guy by trade, and one of the things I'll say is that the minimum CPU for Skyrim, the recommended minimum CPU is the i5 6600K, where the minimum for Fallout 4 was an i5 4590. Now, I don't know which one of these are more powerful. If I just assumed, I would say the i5 6600K is the more powerful CPU. So that is a little bit of a head scratcher if Skyrim does seem to want a little bit of a stronger CPU. That could be a little bit of a danger sign for some of us that are still using these incredibly old CPUs from a long, long time ago. But anyway, that is the Skyrim VR specs. I think it looks pretty good. Hopefully everything will work out great. I mean, basically, if you're playing Fallout 4 VR, you're not having too much trouble with that, you're probably going to be good. Okay, let's go into story number 4. Story number 4, Google has purchased Lytro for around $40 million. Now, this is not locked in stone. This is still kind of a developing story. We don't have the final information with this, but TechCrunch, the website TechCrunch, does have an article on this. Now, again, they're saying that they don't have official numbers and that there are some different opinions that are going on out there. In fact, some people believe that Google could have paid as little as $25 million for Lytro, where other people are saying no, they've paid around $40 million. Now, one of the things that you have to understand with this is this appears to be more of an asset purchasing situation where basically Google is very interested in a bunch of patents that Lytro has related to light fields and other digital imaging related technologies. Lytro has around 59 key patents that Google has been eyeing, very salivating over these patents. They want these patents. And so it seems to be a situation where Google is not so much trying to buy all the employees or maybe some of the actual technology that Lytro is using, but they really want those patents. They want to get their hands on those patents, and that's pretty much what this was all about, because the way we understand it is a lot of Lytro employees are not going to be making the journey over to Google. A lot of them are getting some severance pay and they're walking away, and some of the other employees are just simply walking away from the deal. So not a ton of employees from Lytro are probably going over to Google. We're going to have to wait and kind of see how this all shakes out. Is this good news? Is this bad news? Well, it's good news from the standpoint that what Lytro has been working on might actually get to the in-level consumer a little bit faster, being under Google's umbrella and having the power that Google brings to bear and having the war chest of money that Google brings to bear. They'll be able to take all of Lytro's technology and integrate that and get that into whatever Google is planning to do with it. So there's good news from that standpoint. It'll probably get to us a little bit faster. The bad news is the rich gets richer. Google is already one of the most powerful companies on planet Earth, if if not the most powerful company on planet Earth. And now they just went ahead and got themselves all the best patents related to light field technology. I mean, maybe not all the best, but certainly Litro has some really good patents here. And so it's a case of the rich get richer. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into story number 5. So story number 5 is HTC Vive has announced that the Vive Focus will see an international launch later this year. Now, we don't have a price point or an actual date for the international launch of Vive Focus, but we didn't know for sure. Was this going to be a product that was basically going to stay in China and stay in the Asian markets? Was it ever going to come to Western markets? Was it ever going to come to the USA? Well, that question has apparently been answered. This is going to be an international product. It is likely coming to the United States sometime later this year. Now, we do not know what the price is going to be for the Vive Focus, but when you consider what it's going for in China, it goes for around $600 US, somewhere around there when you consider the different Chinese taxes and all the different things that go into making a purchase of something like a Vive Focus there in China. It's around $600 US, and so some people have been openly speculating, well, how is HTC going to market that over here in the United States when you consider that they are selling the HTC Vive Pro for $800 and the Vive Focus has basically most of the exact same technology, yet it's $200 cheaper and it has its own CPU, its own GPU, its own battery, its own storage. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. Now, my theory with this is we don't want to get back into the HTC Vive Pro price drama. We don't want to get back into that. Let's let the dead horse relax a little bit. We don't want to get into that. But it is a little bit of a conundrum that they might have to face later this year if there aren't some adjustments made to the HTC Vive Pro. Because, yeah, people can wonder out loud, hey, this doesn't add up. You know, there's more technology in the Vive Focus than the Vive Pro. It has the same optics and all of that. It has the same screens, yet you're charging $200 less. Does this make sense? No, it doesn't. So I fully expect the price of the HTC Vive Pro to have lowered considerably by the time the Vive Focus actually enters the market. So we'll definitely keep our eyes on that as well. Alrighty, folks, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. This has been episode 123 of the show for Wednesday, March 21st. Like I said at the top, we do have a ton of Oculus Go news and Oculus Santa Cruz news, and there's probably even additional Oculus related news that is breaking right now as I'm recording this right now. And, you know, I could have tried to add some of that stuff to this episode, but I felt like it's a better idea if I just kind of wait for tomorrow, and then that way I'll have a better grip of the information and be able to present it in a little bit of a better way. So I think that's the way to go here. And so that is going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'll see everybody on Thursday's episode tomorrow. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Take it easy. Later.